He did. He more or less explained that because of how bad this season has been, some change would make sense based on how tough this has all been for everybody. And he did say and mention that because of Paul DePodesta's departure from the organization to go run the Colorado Rockies, the direct quote from Rapoport was, Andrew Berry will be very involved in this situation and where the Cleveland Browns go from here.
Ian Rapoport just dropped a bombshell report that confirms Kevin Stefanski's days in Cleveland are numbered, and the hidden agenda against Shedeur Sanders that's been lurking in the shadows just got exposed. Rapoport revealed that some change would make sense based on how tough this has all been, and that Andrew Berry will be very involved in where the Browns go from here, which means Stefanski is out, but the same GM who built the worst offensive line in football and failed to surround Shedeur with weapons is somehow keeping his job. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Kevin Stefanski's agent has been planting stories for weeks that he's a prime coaching candidate elsewhere, which means he knows he's getting fired and is already checked out on developing Shedeur. What I'm about to expose will reveal the real reason this franchise has been sabotaging their franchise quarterback all season long.
Have a good idea if you're Jimmy Haslam what you're actually going to do.
And by the way, like that article saying that the decision has not been made kind of even leads me to believe that the decision has been made. And in the same breath, he says that Kevin Stefanski is a prime coaching candidate elsewhere. He's following the likes of, Fowler and all of these guys who have already said that. Like, that's some good agent work from Kevin's agent, like already putting this out there that, hey, we know there's 3 weeks left to go. Monday following week 18 might not go our way. Let's plant the seed a month ahead of time, saying that Kevin is highly thought of in league circles, and plant that seed that he could be available.
So let me break down what just happened, because this Ian Rapoport report is way bigger than people realize. And when you read between the lines, it exposes the entire hidden agenda that's been destroying Shedeur Sanders' rookie season. Ian Rapoport came out with an article detailing coaches who've been eliminated from the playoffs and are on the hot seat. And when it came to Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, he didn't write very much. Just the same things we've been hearing over and over about it's up to Jimmy Haslam. Does he want to move with Kevin or not? But then Rapoport jumped on NFL Network and gave a very interesting quote that changes everything. He said, and I quote, "Because of how bad this season has been, some change would make sense based on how tough this has all been for everybody." That's not speculation. That's not rumors. That's an NFL insider telling you that change is coming to Cleveland. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is where the hidden agenda starts to reveal itself. Rapoport then said that because Paul DePodesta left the organization to run the Colorado Rockies, Andrew Berry will be very involved in this situation and where the Browns go from here. Let me repeat that. Andrew Berry will be very involved in where the Browns go from here. So if you're open to some changes, and some changes would make sense, but Andrew Berry is going to be very involved in the situation, that tells you exactly what's about to happen. Kevin Stefanski is getting fired, but Andrew Berry, the GM who built this disaster of a roster, is keeping his job and leading the coaching search for Stefanski's replacement. Think about that for a second. The same GM who gave Shedeur Sanders the 31st ranked offensive line in the NFL gets to stay. The same GM who couldn't draft or acquire legitimate wide receivers gets to remain. The same GM who's consistently struck out at quarterback, offensive line, and receiver positions for 6 years is now being trusted to hire the next head coach.
I'm out there any play. I would wish I would always have the ball in my hand, but that's not what football is. Sometimes you got to run the ball. Sometimes you got to kick a field goal. Everything. That's the game. That's the most important thing is the ball. So in any situation, of course you would want to, but I know we practiced something and we executed it in practice, and we just didn't seem to this day. So I would never go against, kind of like what the call was or anything.
And Shedeur Sanders is the one who has to pay the price for this dysfunction. But it gets worse when you understand what Kevin Stefanski has been doing behind the scenes, because this is where the hidden agenda becomes crystal clear. The analysts breaking down this Rapoport report pointed out something crucial that exposes everything. They said, by the way, that article saying that the decision has not been made kind of even leads me to believe that the decision has been made. You catch that? When insiders say the decision hasn't been made, that's code for the decision has absolutely been made. We're just not announcing it yet. And then they drop the smoking gun. In the same breath, he says that Kevin Stefanski is a prime coaching candidate elsewhere. He's following the likes of Fowler and all these guys who have already said that. That's some good agent work from Kevin's agent, already putting this out there. Kevin Stefanski's agent has been planting stories for weeks that Kevin is highly thought of in league circles and will be a prime coaching candidate when he gets fired. You know what that means? That means Kevin Stefanski knows he's getting fired. His agent knows he's getting fired, and they're already doing damage control to make sure he lands another job somewhere else. And while Stefanski and his agent are out here protecting his future career, who's been developing Shedeur Sanders? Who's been game planning to maximize his strengths? Who's been building an offensive system around the franchise quarterback? Nobody, because Stefanski checked out weeks ago. The analysts explained it perfectly. Let's plant the seed a month ahead of time saying that Kevin is highly thought of in league circles, and plant that seed that he could be available so other owners and other GMs can think of him as a potential replacement here. This is the same thing they've been doing with offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, by the way, constantly leaking stories about how Tommy Rees is highly considered for this job and that job, how he's highly thought of in Michigan circles. It's all agent work. It's all protecting their own careers while the team burns, and Shedeur Sanders is the one getting sacrificed in the process.
We need this year. We need a quarterback, we think. We need an offensive line, we know. And we know we need wide receivers. That's the three positions that Andrew Berry has just not been able to solve. Quarterback, offensive line, receiver. He consistently strikes out or strikes out looking on those positions. So it's like, it is a lot of pressure going into this offseason. You're putting a lot of trust in a guy that's had a big issue solving the offensive side of the football. Built a great defense. I'll give him credit there.
Now let me tell you about the moment that proves Kevin Stefanski has completely checked out and is no longer invested in this team or in developing Shedeur. When reporters asked Kevin about his job security and whether he's thinking about potentially being fired, you know what he said? "My focus is on the Buffalo Bills." That's it. That's his answer. My focus is on the Buffalo Bills. And the analysts covering this absolutely destroyed him for that response because it's such obvious BS. One of them said, "You can say whatever you want, Kevin. You can say your focus is on the Buffalo Bills. You're a human being. If you're telling me part of the focus isn't on the fact that I might be searching for a job here coming up in a few weeks, you'd be lying. I mean, anybody would be lying." The other analyst went even harder. I was surprised that he said that wasn't his focus, because I think for a lot of people, when you go to do your job, your focus is keeping said job. When I drove here this morning, I did so with the intention that we were going to put together a good show today and that next week they'd welcome us back. I have to imagine it's the same thing in the National Football League. He then gave a perfect analogy. If I came in here a year from today and was like, "Man, Nick and I have done terrible on this pregame show. Our shows have just been garbage for 2 years." If you're sitting there thinking, I'm not thinking about the fact that I might have to have a job by the time this season is over if I don't start cleaning up and putting it together again, it's just human nature. You would be lying.
And he just completely shut down the question.
Literally said, "My focus is on the Buffalo Bills." It's like, you can say whatever you want, Kev. You can say your focus is on the Buffalo Bills. You're a human being. Like, if you're telling me part of the focus is in on the fact of, I might be searching for a job here coming up in a few weeks, you'd be lying. I mean, anybody would be lying.
I'm glad that the conversation took us here.
That's what makes Kevin Stefanski's answer so frustrating and so revealing about what's really going on. Because any normal human being in his position would be thinking about their job security. Any normal coach would be worried about getting fired after back-to-back 3-win seasons. But Kevin gave this robotic, corporate, completely disconnected answer of, "My focus is on the Buffalo Bills." And you know what that tells me? It tells me Kevin Stefanski has already accepted that he's getting fired. He's already moved on mentally. He's already thinking about his next job while his agent plants stories about him being a prime candidate elsewhere. And while he's checked out, Shedeur Sanders is out here getting pressured on 46% of his dropbacks, playing behind the worst offensive line in football with receivers who can't catch in an offense that ranks 29th and 30th in the league. The analyst said it perfectly. I don't even think it surprised me because this is a very Kevin Stefanski answer, but I think it also just symbolizes the entire thing that has been what's so frustrating with this team. You can't get a straight answer on anything, and you can't be shown the littlest sneak peek behind the curtain of anything anybody's thinking or anything that's going on behind the scenes. It is highly classified information. He continued, "You could humanize yourself a little bit. You could be like, yeah, of course that's always in the back of your mind, but my main focus here is on the Buffalo Bills, and everybody would have looked around and been like, yeah, I get it, right? Like, yeah, I would imagine your job and the ability to hang on to that job is somewhere even in the back of your mind." But Kevin can't even do that. He can't even be human for 5 seconds. He has to give these corporate, disconnected, robotic answers that tell you nothing. And that's been the problem all season with how he's handled Shedeur Sanders. No transparency, no honesty, no accountability. Just corporate speak and finger-pointing while the franchise quarterback gets destroyed behind the worst offensive line in football.
First, that's a rude question to ask. If I think, it was a great call by my coach,
Do you like the aggression that you like to call? Like, do you like
I like being out there playing. so whatever that comes with, it comes with, we're not gonna be here and ever point finger at no coach or do anything like that. That's extremely disrespectful, and that's not even in my place. So I'm thankful for being out there, honestly, and I'm thankful that he trusts us as an offense to be able to go out there and be able to execute. Did we execute? No, we didn't. But I'm just thankful that we have that trust.
Now let me expose the real hidden agenda here, because this is where everything connects, and you'll understand why Shedeur has been set up to fail from day one. The analysts broke down the 3 positions the Browns desperately needed this year: quarterback, offensive line, and wide receivers. And then one of them dropped this bomb. That's the 3 positions that Andrew Berry has just not been able to solve: quarterback, offensive line, receiver. He consistently strikes out or strikes out looking on those positions. Read that again. Andrew Berry, the GM who's keeping his job, the GM who will be very involved in where the Browns go from here, has consistently failed at the 3 most important positions for a quarterback's success. He can't draft offensive linemen, he can't acquire wide receivers, he can't evaluate quarterbacks. And yet, he's the one who gets to stay, while Kevin Stefanski takes all the blame? The analyst continued, "It is a lot of pressure going into this offseason. You're putting a lot of trust in a guy that's had a big issue solving the offensive side of the football. Built a great defense, I'll give him credit there. Found Carson Schmeezer out of UCLA. I don't think a lot of people were watching Bruins football last season, but you gotta get some guys that can block. You gotta get some guys that can catch. And you gotta figure out if Shedeur Sanders is gonna be the guy throwing it or if it's gonna be somebody else." And here's the killer line. Do I have a ton of faith in Berry being able to do that? I'd be lying to you if I said I did. Like, everything that has been built this year is also on Berry. But that's not what's happening. Instead, Kevin takes the fall, Andrew stays, and Shedeur Sanders has to hope that the same GM who gave him the worst offensive line in football somehow figures out how to build an offense in year 7. Now, let me defend Shedeur in all of this, because while Stefanski and Berry are playing their political games and protecting their careers, Shedeur has been out here fighting. One of the analysts made a point that perfectly captures what Shedeur is dealing with. Kevin Stefanski has been handed the short stick, or drawing the short straw. He didn't have anything to work with this year either. And you know what? That's facts. Kevin Stefanski didn't have the pieces to succeed this year because Andrew Berry failed to give him those pieces. But here's the thing. That's the same situation Shedeur Sanders is in. Shedeur didn't have the offensive line. Shedeur didn't have the receivers. Shedeur didn't have the weapons. The difference is, Kevin Stefanski is an experienced head coach who should be able to scheme around limitations. He should be able to adjust. He should be able to maximize what he has. But he hasn't done any of that. Instead, he's been running the 29th and 30th ranked offense in the league while checking out mentally and letting his agent plant stories about his next job. Ian Rapoport throwing out the fact that Andrew Berry will be very involved in this situation and where the Cleveland Browns go from here. Does that give you a little bit of scare, should that be the case? And the answer is yes, it absolutely should give you a scare, because Andrew Berry has proven over and over that he doesn't know how to build an offense. But for Shedeur's sake, I'm hoping, praying really, that Berry learned something from this disaster of a season, that he understands you can't ask a quarterback to succeed behind the 31st ranked offensive line, that he realizes you need actual weapons at receiver, not just guys who drop passes. Because if Andrew Berry goes into this offseason and makes the same mistakes he's been making for 6 years, then it won't matter who the head coach is. Shedeur will be set up to fail all over again. So here's what I want to know from you, and I really want you to think about this. After learning that Kevin Stefanski's agent has been planting stories about him being a prime coaching candidate elsewhere, while Shedeur gets destroyed behind the worst offensive line in football with no real support, do you finally see the hidden agenda that's been sabotaging this franchise? And here's the second question. With Andrew Berry, the same GM who's failed at quarterback, offensive line, and receiver for 6 straight years, staying on to lead the coaching search and build the roster, do you have any confidence that Shedeur Sanders will get the support he needs to succeed next season? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you see the hidden agenda now. Tell me if you trust Andrew Berry to fix this mess. Tell me everything you're thinking about this situation. Look, the writing is on the wall. Kevin Stefanski is gone, and the hidden agenda against Shedeur Sanders has been exposed. Stefanski checked out weeks ago while his agent planted stories about his next job, leaving Shedeur to suffer behind the worst offensive line in football with no real support. But the bigger concern is Andrew Berry keeping his job despite 6 years of failure at the positions that matter most for a quarterback's success. Shedeur deserves better than this dysfunction, and we can only hope that the new coach and Berry's offseason moves finally give him the weapons and protection he needs. If you made it this far, you're part of the movement. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this Browns coaching search is about to get wild, and you don't want to miss the updates. Until next time, shake the haters off. I'm out. Peace.